Hey, hi there, everyone. How's it going? Hey there, Pranav. People in the chat, can you guys see this? Can you see my video? Am I really pixelated, blurry background? Akash can see us. Okay, yeah, we got a lot of people. Awesome. Guys, welcome to IGDC 2021. So we had our first session of the day, which was with Tejas Oza. So that got wrapped up. And we are on for our next session in the design track. So we have two really, really special people who are going to be joining us for a really cool fireside chat. The session is called 40 Years of Designing Games. And we have one really respected guest who will be joining us today. And I'm super proud and super happy and a lot of other adjectives right now. I'm filled with immense happiness to say that Brenda Romero herself will be having a fireside chat, and our moderator, Purnima, will be interviewing her. So just to give a quick intro, I mean, I don't feel I can justify or I don't feel I can properly explain how amazing someone like Brenda is, but I'll try based on the bio that they sent. So she's a BAFTA award-winning game director, entrepreneur, and a Fulbright Award recipient. She entered the video game industry back in 1981, and currently she is the CEO and co-founder with Romero Games. Maybe you guys have heard of it. So as a game developer, she's worked on quite a bit of stuff, like 50 games. She's contributed to many, many games. The most recent game, I believe, is Empire of Sin. I don't know if you guys have checked that out, but it's on Steam, a bunch of other platforms as well. But then she's also worked on a bunch of older titles like Wizardry, the Jagged Alliance series, titles in Ghost Recon, Dungeons & Dragons, Def Jam. So during her career, she has published on pretty much every platform for current generation consoles to PC, mobile, and is just such a big, large industry figure. And I am super glad that she'll be able to join us here today. And joining her to do to conduct the session, the fireside chat, we have Purnima. So Purnima she's been a part of the game industry for the past 15 years or so. Currently, she's actually the director of design at Zynga, and she has worked on franchises such as BioShock Mobile, How to Train Your Dragons, Neopets, and Farmville 2, Country Escape, to name a few. She is also a Women in Games ambassador at WIGJ, and she's also the founder of Women in Games in India, and also a Hall of Fame inductee at the Global WIG Awards as of 2020. So yeah. If you guys want to know more about her, you can find out on drolife.com. But you know what? Enough of that. I think we should go ahead and bring these guys up on stage. Let me go ahead and chat. Just message them to the chat. And yeah. You guys can hear me, see me okay, right? No problems for your end? I messaged on the private chat. Okay, you can. All right, thanks, Ayush. Oh, that's weird. Oh, hey, Purnima.
Hello.
What's up? Sorry, I guess this thing might have been lagging for you guys. Cool. Oh, guys, by the way, this is Purnima. Say hi.
Hey, everyone.
And yeah, I was just telling everyone how super excited we are to have Brenda here today with us.
Yes, I'm super duper excited. Huge fangirl moment happening backstage. And yeah, that's amazing. I wish this is one of those times it was not a virtual conference for sure.
I know, right? And guys, please give a round of applause for Brenda Romero in the chat. Can we get some hi hellos? How are you? All right, Brenda, can you hear us?
Oh, I
Just
can't
you
hear.
might want to check your mic. Can you guys hear Brenda in the
Uh,
chat?
no, I couldn't hear Brenda. No, I can
Oh,
see you, Brenda. I can't
yeah,
hear
your
you.
video is working. I think there's some issue with the mic. Oh, very strange. Huh. Let me just try messaging her. That is super weird. She's not audible, right? Yeah, okay. The chat
No.
is saying that's strange. All right. Maybe she can try rejoining.
Yeah. Am I audible? Am I audible? Awesome. Thank you. We'll just wait for them to join. This is that awkward silence moment. I have no idea what to say at this point. Good question, Joel. That's what stays, it's like that stays on the backstage.
Hey, I'm so sorry, guys. So I think Brenda is trying to rejoin the session.
Yeah.
Purnima, do you know any
Right.
ways we can stall for time while everyone is waiting and
Yeah.
looking at us?
So Joel has asked me what's the fangirl conversation I had backstage, and I was telling him that stays backstage. Uh,
Hey,
Awesome.
am I
yes,
back?
welcome back.
Great.
How weird! It was all working fine backstage. I come out
I
here.
called
No,
it.
that makes
Okay,
no sense.
guys, you go
Yay!
ahead. Purnima, please take it away.
Yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, hi guys, finally, we know these tech problems are going to happen anyway. So, hello and welcome to this chat. I am Purnima. I'll be your host today. And, I've been in the gaming industry for about 15 years now, and that's nothing compared to the absolute legend we have here. Okay, and it's my pleasure to welcome Brenda Romero, veteran game designer, award winning game designer. She has done everything from A to B, A to Z. And, she's been a role model for so many of us, including me. And yeah, Joel, you were right. Full fangirl moment has happened every time I have interacted with Brenda. And she's such a warm personality to speak to. And definitely one of the conversations, I really wish this was not a virtual meet and I could actually meet her in person. And yes, so on behalf of a lot of you, there are so many questions we will get to ask Brenda. So we will jump to that right away. So Brenda, welcome to the IGDC, and we are super, super glad to have you here.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely. So, I think one of the most important questions for me is how did you get into game development? Like, what's the story behind it?
Oh, geez, it's such a weird story, really. I started making games when I was a little kid. And they say that, I don't know if you're familiar with the line that poverty is the mother of invention, and it was similar with me. I grew up. I come from a low income family, so if I wanted games, I had to make them. Now, being that was in the industry 40 years, there was zero chance we could afford a computer when I was a kid. Like, zero chance. They were really expensive, and you didn't have anything like a Chromebook, right? So what I did is I collected board game pieces and parts, and with those, I made my own games. And I would just use like the flip side of a board game, and I would just create my own game on it. So when I was 15, I just had a chance meeting with this other young woman who was 15. And she asked me if I had a job, and I didn't at the time. and she asked me if I'd ever heard of wizardry, which I hadn't. And then she asked me if I'd ever heard of Dungeons and Dragons, and I had. I'd been playing D&D at that point in time for a few years, and unbelievably, that's how I got my job. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous nowadays, but my first job in the game industry was, man, every gamer's dream job. I played a game, memorized it, so that when people called to get questions and answers on it, I would give them the answers. And I mean, this is like before the internet, right? So I mean, there was the internet then, but like only universities and military had access to it. So, or governments. But anyway, so that's what I did. I just memorized games and gave people the answer. And then basically I just never left. I just never grew up. I just kept making games.
That's amazing. That's a lovely story. And I think it resonates with a lot of people who, especially with India, where, the access to many of these devices are not as common. And, they're making do with what they have and inspired by games and something that they can make. And, it's amazing to see that you have come through that journey and now you're here, absolute success. So I think it gives a lot of hope to people for sure. And moving on to that, sorry. And,
no, anybody. If I could make it, anybody could make it. That's the absolute truth.
Oh, damn, that's amazing. And so, how has been? It's 40 years, and you have been in game design and development. Mm-hmm. So, what were the? How has it evolved? What has been the constants, and what have been the changes that you have seen?
Oh, that's interesting. I don't. A lot of people have asked me what has changed, and the answer is just yes, everything. And everything has changed. The absolute biggest change, without a doubt, is the internet. Being able to access games digitally, being like everything from source control to even this. Like we couldn't do this when I first got into the industry. But the things that have remained the same is I still think that games are at the forefront of technology. Whatever computers are meant to do, we're always pushing them one step further. The design, the things that we do as designers, like what is the core of the game? What is the one thing this game is about? What features make that one thing stronger? What things are we trying to put into the game that make that feature weaker? Like those things are the same. I'm still considering the same things that I considered back then. Like what platform is it going to be on? Who are the players? Certainly our players are far more diverse today than they ever were. Before it would just be sort of like a group of people in San Francisco or Boston, where the initial computer, users groups sprung up. But most everything has changed. The big things that remain the same, though, are just the same design considerations that we take in. We're far nicer to players now than we were. Certainly in the 80s. Like in the 80s, it was totally fine that, like Wizardry 1, the first game I worked on, if your character died, when your character died, you had to resurrect that character. If the resurrection failed, that character was turned to ashes. You could try to resurrect them once. And if the resurrection failed, they were deleted. Like they were erased from the disc. Can you imagine doing that today? Or like we considered like, well, if you just kill the player as punishment, they do it wrong, they die. Like that's, nowadays from a design perspective, we would say that was pretty harsh.
Man, that's absolutely lovely to hear. And I think, one of the things I keep talking about when it comes to game design is that the foundation remains the same, right? The extra layers of it, depending on platforms and genres and tech, that's what changes. But largely, there is solid game design foundation that remains constant throughout.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I think there's this one main question that every game developer conference, every panel gets asked, is how to be a game developer, how to crack the code of breaking into the industry. And you have written an entire book on that. Mm-hmm. But what would be like your top tips for it?
I think the first one is the first one is start making a game. I know there's a good amount of people who say more than anything else, they want to get into game development and they're waiting for college or they're waiting for something. Like you could start coding a game tonight and you are literally in the industry. That's all it takes. Like if we take a look at, I don't know, like let's just imagine an independent. Actually, I can. There's a game of my husband's that's super popular in India, more popular than in India than anywhere else. Dangerous Dave, and you know when he started coding, Dave, was he in the industry then, or was it only when it was released? And I think everybody would probably say no when he started making it, right? So the same way, we can all start making games tonight, and that gets us there. Now the question is, the next step is to start making games. The next step, I think that's important, is get your bad games out of the way. So your first game is not going to be the greatest game in the world. Yeah, okay, maybe it will be. Like I do know examples where somebody has created their first game and that game won a BAFTA. But for the most part, that's not the case. So get your bad games out of the way. Like I know that I think Wolfenstein for my husband was his 88th game, right? So just start making games. Get your bad games out of the way. And then the next one is find good mentors, find good people to work with that are, that like to work like you like to work. Some people may be able to, just do a couple hours a day or even a couple hours a week. Find somebody who you can pair with. In my case, there have certainly been times that I've done way more than a regular workday, and I'm just into it, and that's what I want to do. But then there's other times where I have 3 days this week that I can work on these things.
Yeah, I think that completely resonates with, most of us who have walked that journey and what we have done. And I think elimination is such an important aspect that we undermine. And we need to actually let it out of our system as fast as possible to get to the good ones. On a kind of similar note, when you're continuing in the industry, say you've made it, right? How do you continue to grow? Like, especially when it comes to game design, you're obviously looked at for being creative, being unique, and how do you keep building that? So any tips on that side?
You know what? It's interesting because like when I come on here, you're saying, and even backstage, like, oh my God, 40 years. And it like 40 years is actually, it's a super advantage because I've seen everything. I obviously at this point have built up a certain degree of discipline, but it's also not an advantage. Because I might think that, like, my career, this much, whoops, the screen started changed. Let's just say this is my career. For me, killing the player is a way to teach people. It goes about to here. So I want to make sure that the stuff that is, the design patterns that are super modern, like, I need somebody to tell me, like, no, we don't do it that way anymore. Like, your 1980s thing that you're pulling out of your bag of tricks, that's garbage. And so when people have been making games for a long time, it's important to have a group of people around you. Actually, no matter how long you've been making games, it's important to have a group of people around you who are comfortable telling you places that you need to evolve, are comfortable telling you when something's not fun, are comfortable offering ideas. And so I do, I surround myself with people who are, and then you have to treat those people well so they don't feel afraid that they can't say something. I have a quick question. Just because I'm seeing all the Dave comments in the chat, would it be okay if John just said hi and thanks to the Dave things?
Oh my God, yes.
Would that be okay? Hang on a second. I'll just give him my headphones. Is that all right? You can see the hair behind me.
Absolutely.
Hold on 2 seconds. Okay, hold on. Just say thanks for Dave's.
Oh my God.
Hey there.
Hello.
Thanks for the Dave stuff.
Oh my God, this is absolute. Look, okay, fangirling into 2 or into 10 has happened at this point. My goodness. This is brilliant.
In India.
All right.
Yes. Thank you so much. I mean, this is brilliant. I guess people are just rejoicing. I'm pretty sure, and I'm probably just trying to reflect that fangirl moment for all of them.
For everybody.
Yes, absolutely.
That's cool.
Yes, so I am at loss of words at this point. Oh my God!
Did she mention the big box, Dave?
Yes, maybe. I think there's one question I wanted to. ask Brenda is about Romero games. Maybe you can answer that for us.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe just take us. Oh my God, yes.
So there's a Dangerous Dave box coming out with all 9 different Daves that have ever been made in here for the Apple II and the PC, and a remastered version of Dave that looks pretty cool.
Wow, that's amazing. How has this journey been for you from there to now at Romero Games and Empires of Sin?
Oh, geez, it's been pretty great. Even before Dave, I'd been making games for 10 years, and so it's funny. The Dave that everybody's played took me 1 month to make. That game took 1 month. But it went all over the world because it was free and it was supposed to be given away.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, it was really cool to. I've never done a talk with a company in India yet, but I'm invited to talks all the time in India to come to like the World Congress.
Yes.
But yeah, I'd like to thank everybody in India for being, huge fans of Dave. It's funny, it's not even Dangerous Dave, it's just Dave, Dave.exe.
Yes.
But yeah, thanks a lot. I'm glad that a lot of you have played the game. It's a fun little game, and the remaster actually has the original sounds, the graphics, the gameplay. It's exactly like the original, or you can play the HD version, and they're both compatible with each other. So yeah, it'll be out pretty soon. It's pretty cool. But thanks for being Dave players.
Yes,
and also just
absolutely, always.
Game players in general. Yeah, thanks a lot. I'll just give this back to Brenda.
Thank you, John.
Surprise guest, John Romero. Okay, here we go.
Thanks, Brenda. Okay, that just my fangirl moment has now rocketed. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and so I just do see somebody hinting that we need to invite him over for the next year. Yeah, do. Yeah, absolutely.
We
Yeah,
always
he
try for it.
He gets. I can't even tell you how many when I try to explain to the rest of the world that Dangerous Dave is bigger in India than Doom, and people don't believe me. 100%, I know I'm right because I've seen people respond. Anyway, so that was so. Hopefully that was okay, just for him to be able to say thanks. That means a lot to him.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's a pleasure for all of us. Thank you for that. Oh, okay. I'm trying to get back to this. All right. So I think I also wanted to know a little bit on your thought process about the series that you made, which is The Mechanic is a Message. Mm-hmm. I think it was a brilliant series, and obviously Train was one of the more famous ones, right? So what was the thought process behind the entire series?
Well, I guess it's not unlike, I think, I'm sure that in the chat in here, we have a collection of writers, poets, musicians, and when you first come up with a song or you first come up with something, you don't send it out to people, right? Like you don't, and so for me, I was at a point where I really wanted to try to see what games could do. And I wanted to make something that I guess was kind of like a documentary game. Like how could I take these very difficult human experiences and create a game about them and like create an experience through a game. So I did that, and I wasn't really like intending for them to go anywhere or for people to see them. But they did. They went everywhere. So I agreed with a friend of mine that I would give a talk about them at a small conference. And unbeknownst to me, there was a reporter at the back of the conference. And then he wrote about them, and then everybody knew about them. But really, it was a design exercise. I wanted to create a game that was as good as I could possibly create. To the best of my abilities. Now, granted, it was just me. Like, I was the artist. It's these games. If people aren't familiar with them, they're all board games. So I'm the designer. I'm the artist. I'm the whole thing. And I just really wanted to take the time. Like there was no budget. There was no publisher, no producer, nobody to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, you've got to cut that thing because that's going to take too much time." So I just did a design exercise to make a game as good as I could possibly make it, and the result was I'd say Train is probably, it's certainly the best note of the series. I would say the game that's probably as perfect as I could make a game is a game called Shiacon Lot, which is the Irish game. But still, all these years later, there's only one thing I would change about Train, which is that I did not intend for Train to be like going from museum to museum or installation to installation. So it was certainly, like, it was never designed to be played a million times. Well, a million, that's pushing it. But it was never designed to be played, hundreds of times, right? So it's more fragile. It has a bunch of broken glass in it. So, I didn't ever intend it to be played by as many people. So maybe I'd change that, but there's nothing about the rules I'd change. The rules are as good as I could get them. Maybe if I looked at it again, I might be able to do something better, but I doubt it. I put everything I had into those games.
That's amazing. And I think, with your book, Challenges for Game Designer, the non-digital exercises, I think it's a bit of, you've always tried to look at the simplified version of game design, I would say. Yeah. And you don't need devices and, larger tech to just get started. Like, these are your ground rules, and that's where you start building from, and then keep moving to bigger and better things.
And it's particularly important because while it's easy for people to say nowadays that that you can get into tech and game making, it's easy to do that. Like, you can get Unity for free, and there's all these various things that you can do for free. It's like computers aren't for free. Certainly when John and I were growing up, we couldn't afford computers. So for people who are, especially people who come from low-income backgrounds, they can still get into game design and learn everything they need to know about game design just to buy the pieces and parts they find in their house. They can make games from them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that also differentiates sort of gamers from game designers, right? Because you're now creating something. Like, you always start as a gamer, but then as you play, you're trying to figure out what if, the moment you start asking these questions, that seed of game design and development kind of grows in you, and then you sort of start getting a lot better at it, for sure. And I think in your journey, like, you started, kind of also as a writer and a tester, and you've moved you've essayed all possible roles, to be honest. And then, you run a studio, you are a creative director. So what has that journey been like? What all skills did you have to pick up? Was it organic? Did you look for something? Was there any mentor? Like, what was your journey like?
I guess a lot of it was all the above. Like, when you say, was it organic? Was it, did I have a mentor? Yeah, all of it. I think it goes like, somebody asked a question, what would the path be for a small Indian game dev to get into the industry? Like, it's kind of the same as mine, right? Which just is, find, if you don't want to work for yourself, you don't want to make games for yourself while keeping a day job so you've got food on the table, take any role you can get just to get your foot in the door. Like, any role to get your foot in the door. So my role, now granted I was 15 when I got in the door, but my role was to answer the Wizardry hotline. From there, I moved to like customer service. I then started working more full-time in testing. I headed up testing. Then I started working, and that got me working directly with the game designers. And so I had a front row seat to the development of all the Wizardry games and Jagged Alliance series. Like, how incredibly lucky. Now, later on, I moved into design and in writing on both of those series. But, if basically what I would do is just get your foot in anywhere you can, and then look for a role that's above you, that's open, that you feel like you're qualified, you can do, and try to get it. Ask people what you need to know, and just be hungry. Like, especially, I'm in Ireland now, and I know that, I know India's game industry is certainly growing as well. So, I'm in a newer industry here in Ireland. So it's just, it's just find what you can and find what you can. If you have to go abroad, to get, just to get the experience you're looking for. But, I know loads of Irish game developers who go abroad and get the experience that they're looking for, and then they come home, and it may be the same as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think we have one more question on mechanics of the message. If it's coming to a digital platform,
No.
for the large.
No, I've been asked that, it's, and in a way, like the thing is, I created those games to be a unique experience. Like and if, like Jackson Pollock did one painting, like he wasn't mandated that he's got to distribute a zillion of them. So, in some of the games, you can't actually translate them. Like you couldn't have them on a digital platform. Like Train, there's this one set part in the rules where it's down to how do the players resolve this disconnect in the rule set. And the answer to that, like, is wide as the human imagination, right? So how do you possibly put that on a machine? So I love that there are certain things. I love that there are still certain things that a computer cannot replicate in game design. And I love that there's like certain boundaries as well that this series has. Like, with Train, there's just one of them. I have another game called Black Box, which is from the same series. And Black Box is a one-play, single-player game. And I've already played it. And so when you see it, it's just the end game state. And that's it. Nobody knows rules. Nobody knows how, well, the rules are written down, and if anybody photographed them, then they would have them. I have them. But anyway, it's already a finished game. And it was really innovative when I did it. And then Risk Legacy came out, and all those legacy games. So it's not innovative at all anymore. And it just seems like, well, why would you only do one? So I had 13 times. But it was cool at the time when I came out with it.
Yeah, that's almost like, the installation art form, and then like it marries the game design. Like, this is what you see. This is over now. This is what you see. It's amazing. I think, sometimes you need to experience that to know the story behind it. And knowing the story is basically the game than just the state that you see in front of you.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. I think, one question we have is, what are the frequent mistakes you see most game devs making? And, are there any different mistakes from like 10, 20, 30 years ago?
Yeah, there's probably not, right? I mean, we're probably, and I don't even know that I call them mistakes, because I think fundamentally every game designer will keep improving their game based on feedback, right? So if you tell me this sucks, I'm going to make it better. I'm going to figure out why it sucks, and I'm going to make it better. There's a unique, and so like if we go back to the 80s and 90s, when I ship a game, that's it, man. It's out there, and there's no update, there's no nothing. Nowadays, game designers let go of that game earlier because we ship the game, it goes through certification on the consoles, right? So, and then if you do a simultaneous release, so you ship the game, and there's like a 2 or 3 month window.
Yeah.
That people are still trying to like throw stuff into the game. And that I would say, that, and also like when you're locked in for a specific development window, that the question is, do you give up that window and take all the penalties that come with that, which can be substantial? Or is the publisher going to make a decision? It's never a game designer's decision, ever. It is a publisher's decision, maybe a whole development company's decision, but it's never the game designer's decision. And so you see games go out, and you're like, oh my God, how could you as a game designer do that? And you're like, man, that wasn't me. Except that is not what you say. But I think the reason I say that is in games, like game designers, nobody would get into this if they didn't get ferociously attached to their work. And so when you see games come out that have fallen down, a lot of the time it's a pipeline problem. It's this publishing pipeline that I think isn't great for developers or players. But the other mistakes, like the early mistakes, are just massively overscoping things. Like, oh my God, and we could do this, and we could do this, and we could do this. There's a friend of mine, his name's Seth Spalding. I think he's an art manager now at Blizzard, and he says, write down everything you want in your game, and then cut 2/3 of it, and you probably still won't be able to get it all in. So, that is as true today as it ever was, and every game designer wants to stuff everything under the sun into a game, and that's why we have producers, that's why we have lead programmers to say, like, all right, you can't can't possibly have all of this stuff. Or you can, but you're going to need a lot more time. Yeah. But it's just trying to stuff, too much stuff into the game. Probably not involving QA early enough so QA can really find out some of the super weird interactions between systems as well. I see that happen a fair bit.
Awesome. So I think I have two sort of related questions with that. So one on the side of, can you share how player interest has evolved from back then and how it is influencing game design right now?
Oh, man. It's player interest now. I'm going to guess players' interest. Like the first time that I recall that players really get into the act is in modding. And so we start to see, there were some early mods, but the mod community really kicks off actually with Wolfenstein a tiny bit, and then with Doom because they made it open and super accessible. And so that's the first time players can be like, that's great, we're thrilled with the game you made, but here's what we want to play now. But and then it takes another evolution with things like Kickstarter. Do you actually want to financially back this game? And I would say Kickstarter itself, Kickstarter I know is just still going gangbusters for people making board games. But the next iteration, I think, is players getting actively involved in early access games. So you kind of like what you see, you can see where this game is going, and developers are reading that sort of stuff, reading what players comment on. And then we actually get up to, I can use my most recent game as an example where we will launch the game. It sort of tripped out of the gate, and that can happen, right? Like you're going to have games that are good, like John made Doom and Quake and Wolfenstein and Dave, and then he made Daikatana. Like you're not going to get 100% hits no matter what you do. So if this is your career, accept that your trip out of the gate is coming. And so with that, we worked really hard what are the players, what concerns do the players have? And then we actually created a testing group that we call the family. And the family actually, they get to play an early build of the game. And so that early build of the game, they're like, oh, we hate this, or, oh, this is great, or can you do something like that? And so I believe developers, especially for games that are live, like once they're out there, people want to get players' opinions on the game. And as a designer, the key thing that we have to do, we have a design team, so there are 5 of us, so that information comes back, and depending on what the specialty is, we evaluate those things. And we have to act, I guess, in some respect, like doctors. So you might come in complaining about certain symptoms as a player, but as the doctors, we have to go, okay, yeah, so they're saying they want their leg cut off, but what is actually the problem is something. And so, but yeah, we listen. Because of the internet, which sounds like such a common thing, because of the internet, we have such great access to players, such great access to their feedback. And sure, as a game designer, a game developer, you have to have a tough skin because sometimes that feedback isn't great. But ultimately, I try to read through the lines, which is, they wouldn't be saying these things if they didn't care. If they that anybody's talking about your game is a good thing, and you're not gonna, it's not always going to be super great feedback.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, I think even when some of the new game ideas, when we are testing something out, we're always like, hey, any feedback is good because that means someone is invested. Even if it's negative feedback, if they have taken the effort to tell us it's bad.
Somebody's played my game. Yay!
Yeah, I think just as a follow-up on the development side of things, and how do you keep ideas fresh? Especially, it gets overwhelming when you're working in a pressurized environment with, like you said, there are deadlines which are beyond the control of probably a game designer or a developer.
So how do I keep things fresh? Well, I think a lot of it is working with people I really like. That makes things fun. I the design team that I have, it's not just the design team, it's the whole team. But I work with people that I really like to work with. We're still all working from home. And I can't wait, to be able to work with them again, like in person. So that's part of it. I play a lot of games and I'm so excited. Like at the end of every year, the last 2 weeks of December, the first week of January, I do nothing at all, nothing useful but play games. That is my full-time job. So I play the latest games that are out there. I play all the games that are up for the big awards. So that helps. It's like every year, like if I were a chef, it's like going to all the best restaurants. And that's like the coolest perk that we have as game developers, right? Like we actually do have to play games. I listen to what other game developers are talking about in terms of what games that they think are really at the forefront. So I think that's how. I mean, we're fortunate in that games are always reinventing themselves. And so if we are not likewise keeping fresh, we've sort of made a decision to retire. Because otherwise, like, the game industry is going to keep moving on. So you have to keep playing games. But at least, like, our work is playing games. I'm so excited. I just realized, like, holy cow, I'm so close to, it's a month until I can play games nonstop for 3 weeks. It's going to be awesome.
I think it kind of reinstates why we love this industry also, right? When we are playing this, when we are seeing that experience through other game developers' eyes and what they have put it for us as players, it's like, oh, it's time for me to do it again. I think it just excites me too.
Yeah, and I love too, like when I play a game that I'm like, God, that is such a good game. Like when I played something that I know that I couldn't have, like I know I could not have come up with that game. And it just feels like a masterwork. So
on that slightly similar note, what would be your most challenging work or the most enjoyable one? Like both, maybe.
The most challenging work that I created, I guess without a doubt, gosh, that's hard. Games are challenging in different ways. I just see that Vivek just posted something about Train. Train was really challenging to do the research for that. That's a game about the Holocaust, and so I did 9 months of research on that game every single day. It didn't take me that long to build it, but it took me a long time to figure out exactly what to build and to give the object the space that it needed. And I do. He mentions too that the rules do not refer to Train as a game. And there was a decision that I made at the time because the word game is so loaded, right? Like you can't make a game about something. But Train was like when Train was written about it was in The Escapist where the first article appeared. I thought like I was never going to get a job again, for making games about such serious subject matter. Now every other form of art, can do that, but not games. We weren't allowed at the time to make games about serious subject matter. Like you just wouldn't do it. So I would say that was really hard. It was hard to do that, but it was also like I was pushing myself as hard as I could to make the best game I could possibly make. So that's a different kind of hard. And then, the last game that I worked on, Empire of Sin, that was really hard from a design perspective. It is a massive system soup. And there were a lot of, so it was just super challenging. I mean, when we launched that game, the launch of a game nowadays is really just going into the next phase of development, really. And man, I was beat after the launch, just absolutely beat. And there was no taking time off, right? Because it's like, oh my God, of course, there were 2 super critical bugs that were found. So, it was right back at work. But yeah, the hardest game, of just in terms of work put in, was Empire of Sin. That was a really hard game to ship.
Nice. But I'm pretty sure that experience is definitely rewarding, right? Like the end result shows.
Yeah, well, so we're coming out the end of this week. We're coming out with the first DLC, and it feels really good. And I feel totally different now than I did when we were in the launch canon for the original game. So yeah, and it's always exciting to see people playing your game, and it's always exciting to move on to the next thing as well.
Amazing. So there's one thing I keep telling people. It's like if you are having fun while making the game, there's a much better likelihood that your players are going to have fun too.
Absolutely.
And I think we have to be the players first, right? Like as game designers especially, you become players and you have to kind of play both roles of what inputs to take and what not to, and cater to that. And it's it's a very important and great dynamic to be as a game designer, I would say. On that, if you were to relive one day in your career from the past, what would that day be?
I'll give you the answer. This is such a corny answer. I'm so sorry. It's such a corny answer. But it was the first thing that popped into my head. And it was John and I have been in the game industry. We've been in the game industry for a really long time, both of us. And we've known each other since 1987. So if I could relive one day since it happened in the industry, it would absolutely be when I first met him. He goes on to marry somebody else. I go on to marry somebody else. But if I had one day, it's like, stop. Whatever you're going to do, just stop. Just stop right now. Look, we're going to be great together. We are really good friends. We will be an amazing couple. Can you just stop right now, and we'll just get together right now. Now that is like a personal side, but we're both in the game industry, but 100% that's what I would do. You know, if I lived to be 150, that still wouldn't be long enough with him. Yeah, we're really happy together, and we've been together a long time. So the honeymoon period is definitely we're still in the honeymoon period. But if it were going to be passed, it would have passed. If I had to pick a non-personal day, oh gosh, a non-personal. That's tricky. I don't know. Like I've been so lucky to meet so many people. I think about meeting Gary Gygax and, you know, the creator of Dungeons and Dragons, and Dave Arneson, the co-creator of Dungeons and Dragons. The unbelievable warmth I felt, you know, with Donovan when he released Gunman Taco Truck. It's 40 years. There's so many incredibly great moments. I've been lucky to meet a lot of great people. Probably I wouldn't have stayed at my job at Surtech Software for 20 years. That's a long time to be at the same place. But yeah, I've had a lot of incredibly great days. Who is the better gamer? Somebody's asking here. Sanjay's asking, who's the better gamer, you or John? Who wins when you guys play any competitive games? That's kind of tricky, right? Like he has, John is, it's not fair playing John in a first-person shooter. Let's just be straight up with that. I played the original Ghost Recon, I played sniper almost always in that game, so I could headshot him, which is incredibly satisfying. But we're really competitive. But I can't even touch John in shooters. I've actually gone so far as to, like, this is true. This is ridiculous. I've gone so far as to set up a match between John and Fatality, just like so John could be destroyed. But yeah, he's really good when it comes to competitive games. So when it comes to shooters, there's nobody better. Like he was not defeated in Doom for 13 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Master of Doom. Nice. And on game design skills, I think there was one question here, and I have a similar question as well, is, you know, how do you judge and evaluate maybe even your own game design skills? And then what is it that sets apart, you know, good game designers from great game designers? I'll
answer the last one, because that one is a pretty obvious answer, sorry. A great game designer gets the initial design written down or prototyped and immediately is desperate for people to point out what's wrong. Because they know, there's zero chance that this is going to be right out of the gate. So please, can you please tell me what's wrong? The newer game designer will be like, there it is, and they'll think it's great. And they are going to wait till it comes out and gets destroyed in the press. So great game designers I think there's good game designers, and then great game designers is, you know, part of that is too much down to luck, being at the right place at the right time with the right team, and the right budget and all that other stuff. But like if you took, you know, for instance, if we take Doom, I think everybody can consider that Doom is universally a great game. Doom would not have been Doom without Carmack, and Doom would not have been Doom without Romero. Right? It took the two of them to get. Without the two of them, you are not going to have that game. Not one. Like Ken's Labyrinth is a good example of what would happen if you just had Carmack. But where the heck was I going with this question? Good game designers. I forgot the beginning of the question. One more time.
So the first one was like, how do you judge and evaluate your own game design skills?
Well, when I come up with a game, like in the last game, it was really great, because Paradox is great about this. I get focus testing as soon as that game is barely running. I want people's opinion on the game. How do they like it? And we do focus testing where I'm not there. I'm not impeding anything in any way. And we have people interview them. What's wrong with the game? What is it missing? What do they still like? How would they evaluate the fun? And so there's a load of that. Just subjecting the game to regular critique. Also, surrounding yourself with other game designers, or finding someone who tends to be pretty contrary. Not in a negative way, not in a mean way, is what I mean to say. Like I work with Chris King. He's excellent in strategy games, and I know that if I come up with something, I know that Chris will say, you really should consider these things. And then there are times where Chris will come up with something, and I'll think, I can see how you like that, but I think this whole segment of players isn't going to like that. But together, because we're both comfortable with one another, we're both comfortable giving each other feedback, we'll get at a better game design collectively.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that makes sense. We definitely need someone to play the devil's advocate, because then only we know we are doing right? If everyone just walks into a meeting and just agrees to what the other person is saying, I don't think we have made progress at all.
No, not at all. And then there's sometimes just being devil's advocate for the sake of being devil's advocate is
that too. So have you ever felt creatively drained or been at a low point creatively in your career? And what did you do to get out of it?
Yeah, absolutely. There's something, I guess, that made me think of something which I didn't say to an answer before. So I'll say this quickly. One of the things, or maybe it was a question that I read, but one of the things that I do to get inspiration is I study great games. Like I study them like a game designer studies them, not just play it and go, wow, that was great, but what made it great, right? Like set a timer on your phone for 15 minutes. In 15 minutes, what are you thinking about? What is the game making you think about? What is your mental state? How did the game get it that way? And so anyway, that is like how to keep it fresh. I forgot to say that then. Have I ever been at a low point? Yeah, I would say after I ship, with the exception of the board games, almost every game, really like long game that I've shipped, I said something like, that's it, man. That's it. And I don't even believe myself when I say it. I think that's important to say. Like, I'm not going to make any more games. I'm done. And that is just never true, right? It's obviously. But I know it's so much fun. The beginning of a game is so much fun. Closing a game is also fun, but like Warren Spector, he loves that part. He says that's his favorite part. I love the beginning of a game. The end of the game is about discipline, and it's hard, and when it comes together, it's super cool, but sometimes it doesn't come together as well as you want. But yeah, what I do is I just shut off. I shut the hell off. No computer, no nothing. Back away from everything. I write, I read, I study programming. I do something to put things creatively in. And then there's also like a comfort game that I play. I love Civilization Revolution. I actually have a couple Xboxes. And a couple original Xboxes whose sole purpose in life is to play Civilization Revolution. One is a backup in case the first one dies. I also mentor some young women in the industry, and like that is like the longer you've been in the industry, the more important I think mentoring is, because it just keeps you super excited. Like you see somebody who's coming in and they're like, man, they just cannot wait to be where you are and cannot wait to make the next game. And you're like, yeah, this is awesome. This is great. So, that goes hand in hand. But absolutely, like I've had times where like after just a really hard, my family owned a farm. And so working on a farm is actual real hard work. but you can push your brain to the point that your brain is like, I'm done. And when that happens, you need to do what you need to do to get the good stuff back in, to get your stuff back there. And sometimes I'd say that the worst one I had, it took a few months to get my brain, sort of. It wasn't a few months of a break, man. I was working during that time. You just keep. It's something you're going to go through, but that's the operative word. You will go through it. Like you will get to the other side.
That's awesome. And I'm afraid we are out of time. I know there's so much more questions people want to ask. We'll definitely try to get Brenda again here. I think the questions are never ending. But yeah, we can get Vijay on board. And thank you, Brenda, so much. This has been amazing and lovely to hear.
Thanks for the invite. Thanks for humoring my husband with his thank you to India. It's the first time he's ever been able to do that, so that was a real treat. Thank you.
Guys, thank you so much. That was really, really amazing. Guys, can we get some congrats in the chat, please? I don't know if there's a clapping emoji, but please use that as well. Brenda, thank you so much, and please thank John from our side as well. Purnima, you were freaking fantastic. I really appreciate you guys. You were, I would also like to clap for Purnima after this as well. So, guys, apologies, but we will have to move on to the next session. For now, Brenda and Purnima, you guys can head back to the backstage. There should be an option on the top right. You can just click on that.
Okay,
Yep.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
All right. And, guys, once again, thank you so much. I think I'm lagging right now. No, I seem okay. Wow, that was freaking amazing. Just a quick reminder before our next session. So we have a session at 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. And that's going to be starting games, turning the impossible into the very difficult. And that's going to be presented by Matthew Buxton from Rovio. Really super interesting talk. I mean, I won't spoil anything for you guys, but definitely when you get time after this, it's going to be starting in just a few minutes. Just one quick thing. Guys, do please fill out that survey form. I'm going to copy and paste it once again in the chat. You'll have to copy and paste it and put it into your browser. Please fill that survey form out. It really, really helps us, and getting information for you guys and knowing what you guys think about these sessions is super important for us, especially if we want to keep doing this every year. But that's all for now. I'm going to be heading out. I hope you guys enjoyed the session. I really appreciate it. You all been very, very patient. But also Brenda and Purnima are on Twitter, by the way, in case you guys just want to reach out whenever. But yeah, that's all I have to say for now. So thank you, everyone. I'll catch you in the next session, and have a good day.